This is the Personal Foul Podcast. I'm your host, Colton Gesser. We have an exciting show for you on hand today. We have special guest, NFL agent Leigh Steinberg from Steinberg Entertainment. Thank you for coming on, Leigh.
My pleasure.
For people who don't know Leigh, he's probably one of the most popular NFL agent and one of the best in the business. The list goes on and on about Leigh, from records for most overall picks with 8 first overall picks, which is amazing. And honestly, we're going to get into some of his players that he does have currently on his resume right now. There should be more to that list if people were to guess how good some of these players have turned out to be. In a record 64 first-round picks. You know, how impressive is it to have a resume like that, Leigh? You know, being one of the best and probably the top sport worldwide.
We've also represented players in baseball, had a big practice, basketball, did boxers like Oscar De La Hoya and Lennox Lewis, Olympic athletes. The thing I'm most proud about is the impact they've made as role models, and the fact that these athletes all go back and retrace their roots to the high school, collegiate, and professional level and set up charitable and community programs to make an impact. And so our business is about helping with the maturation process of young men, from preparing for the draft to being role models to ultimately, hopefully, making the Hall of Fame. We have 11 players in football that have done that.
Yes, you do. I was just about to name the 11. You got Howie Long, Steve Young, Troy Aikman, Warren Moon, Thurman Thomas, Bruce Smith, Derek Thomas, Kevin Greene, Kenny Easley, Tony Gonzalez, and Edgerrin James. And you might have some more and more to go with that list. Quite an impressive list. And then you got your active players, Adrian Amos, Javon Brown from the Titans, Kareem Hunt, who we just saw last night, had a great game for the Browns. Patrick Mahomes, clearly can't forget that. Tua Tagovailoa, James Robinson, Ronald Jones. The list goes on and on for your current players. You know, for me, it's quite impressive. You know, the fact that you got a guy like James Robinson on there, and to be honest, is probably one of my snubs on the Pro Bowl for this year. One of my first questions for you. What's it like seeing how impressive he was as an undrafted guy and how productive he was for the Jaguars this season?
It should give people who are aspiring to play pro football hope, because as good as he was in college, he goes the entire 3 days of the draft and doesn't get drafted. And then the agents working with him most directly, Dan Saffron and Samantha Stankovic, place him with Jacksonville. And now the first question is, as an undrafted free agent, do you make the team? So he does that, which is against the odds. And then he becomes a 1,000-yard rusher in his rookie year. So he's a candidate for Rookie of the Year, and people can vote for him.
Rightfully so. Had a great campaign. Probably one of the guys that got snubbed for a Pro Bowl the season he had. For a team that wasn't expected to do much, he had a fantastic campaign there. Going on to some of your other players, I know you said undrafted, especially it is crazy with this kind of season with no really all-season workouts, you know, where you're having a lot of those undrafted guys make rosters. It is kind of crazy the story James Robinson has. Going on to another guy who had a little shaky past and found his way back into the league after getting cut by the Chiefs, Kareem Hunt has turned out to be a really good player. You know, we saw how impressive he was in Kansas City. He's turned out to be a really good guy after his little situation he had. What's it like seeing him bounce back and having the season he had right now for the Cleveland Browns?
Well, remember in his rookie year, he gained 1,000 yards to make the Pro Bowl. Life is a learning experience. And so when you have some incident of some sort, the question is, how do you come back from it? Do you acknowledge your responsibility? Do you take steps to make sure there won't be a recurrence? And he's worked very, very hard to make sure his one negative experience won't be followed by other ones. So now he's in a situation all of a sudden where he's not with the Chiefs, but he's advancing in the playoffs. And he's a very good person. He made a bad choice. And now let's judge him for who he is today and what impact he can make.
He's made a huge impact. We saw it last night, 2 touchdowns on the Steelers into an impressive upset. You can tell in the bag I am a Steelers fan, so got to tip the cap to the Browns. Impressive game. going into one of your former clients, reason why I kind of reached out to you from the 2004 draft, which is a loaded class. One of the things I saw is you were Ben's agent during that draft. And to see how that panned out, we're getting into one of your other clients that had an impressive rookie campaign also. How was it like dealing with that situation in the draft where Ben, it was kind of a lock. He was probably going to go to the Giants is what you and your team expected from the fall to the Steelers. What was that situation like, sitting in that green room and just waiting for Ben's name to get called?
So it was 2004, and there were three top quarterbacks in that draft: Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, and Ben. And I was almost positive that somehow out of that, even though they went ahead and drafted Manning first, San Diego was going to end up with Phillip Rivers because they fell in love with him when they coached the Senior Bowl. I also knew that Ernie Corsi, the Giants, thought that Eli Manning was a generational player. But when they still hadn't made a deal between New York and San Diego, people kept telling Ben, well, you're going to go to the New York Giants on the number 4 pick. And the coach, Tom Coughlin, had called Ben's coach and said, if you're sitting there on draft day and we haven't already taken Eli Manning, we're going to pick you. So they made his expectations at a high level. Now you're sitting in the green room, crowded with all other draftees, and now it comes up to the Giants pick, number 4. And draft time is not real time. It's water torture time. Every second seems like a minute. Every minute seems like an hour. Drip, drip, drip. And so they have 15 minutes in those days to make the pick. And as the clock's ticking down, I'm like, Dan, you're not going there. And there are better teams that are probably better fits below. But it didn't matter because hope springs eternal. And so we go 14 minutes and about 50 seconds. And the Giants announce the trade, and they announce that they've got Eli Manning, and pop, there goes all the air out of the balloon. But then it turned out to be Pittsburgh, which was a match made in heaven because his personality fit their team and fit the city, and it ended up, being a match made in heaven. And here we are all those years later.
Yeah, I think it worked out for all 3 teams personally. All 3 of those guys probably have a chance to get into the Hall, which is great. One of the great classes for quarterbacks ever. And, we keep seeing the classes that are coming out future-wise. But going into the next player, I kind of mentioned Tua. I did reach the question that I asked. What do you think of how they handled Tua this year? I was really hoping they would let him throw the ball a bit more. But, again, going back to Ben's rookie season, it kind of reminded me very similarly of watching them with a great defense, just like the Steelers had, and don't make mistakes. Clearly, Ben threw the ball a little bit more, but the Dolphins had a very fantastic secondary, leading the league in interceptions with Xavier Howard with 10. Great season for them. Did you see similarities the way they handled Tua, the way the Steelers handled Ben their rookie seasons?
Well, what happened with Ben is that he was not scheduled to start that first year, but Tommy Maddox ended up getting hurt. So Ben came in and had this miraculous run, where he won every game, and it was meteoric. Normally, the maturation cycle for a young quarterback is difficult because the game is played at such a faster speed than college. You've got much better players. The defenses are confusing. And the only way for that quarterback to get better is to be out on the field and read defenses over and over and over again until it slows down. So when you see a Justin Herbert take off or Joe Burrow the way they did, let's keep an eye on whether or not teams learn how to defend them, because that's unusual. So the care and breeding of Tua, I think that Miami had a plan going into the year, which is that they'd start out with him sitting back. my players can't stand it when I say this, but it wouldn't bother me if they sat a whole year on the bench and just learned from a talented veteran. It didn't hurt Patrick Mahomes. It didn't hurt Aaron Rodgers or Phillip Rivers or a whole set of other quarterbacks. But they had a set time for Tua, and I think they did everything possible to make sure he was protected, that he got to come into the league in a measured way. And they were looking far beyond this year to how to not put him into difficult situations that might somehow retard his development.
Another kind of question to bounce off of that, another quarterback's name that is kind of being tossed in the hat in Miami is being mentioned as a team, which, again, people need to stop blowing this out of proportion because you look at the cap hit that the Texans will take. I'm talking about Deshaun Watson here. The cap hit that they're going to take if they do trade him, it's going to destroy their franchise. So people need to pump the brakes on that. But a name that is mentioned is the Dolphins and Tua being possibly shipped to the Texans in a deal. That is stuff that is popping up again. I don't think it's going to happen. But what's it like, again, because you've had other players that have been involved in trades. What's it like, again, rookie, clearly going to be going into a second year, having a player's name like that tossed around in a hat where there's a lot of uncertainty? How do you handle that?
Well, first of all, understand that in all of these cases, we have direct relationships with the team. In other words, whether it's Stephen Ross at the Dolphins or Tom Garfinkel, their CEO, or their general manager, the coach. And none of that's being brought up with Tua and with us. So you can take these names and play match game with them, but the reality is, I think they got the quarterback they wanted in the draft. They knew it would be a development. Remember, there were people saying a year ago that Tua would have to take his first year off, that he was too injured, this and that. And I mean, he got healthy before training camp. And so I think they like him. They like his leadership qualities, and he's going to be their franchise quarterback. So you could speculate all you want, but and make no bones about it, Deshaun Watson's an outstanding quarterback. He's a franchise quarterback.
Absolutely, he is. I agree with you with Dasmerson. I think Tua is the right guy. And the fact that, again, you did mention Tua wasn't supposed to play this year at all. And we saw Tua come in a game against one of your other clients in Patrick Mahomes and his dominant Chiefs, #1 overall seed. He came out and played great in that second half with no receivers. Gesicki gets banged up in that game. And he showed out in that second half and made it a game against Kansas City. So I think Miami does have their guy in Tua. Going on to your other guy, probably the hottest name in the league, won his first Super Bowl last year, MVP, great season for Mahomes. What's it like handling a client like that with that much power and just the popularity for Mahomes?
Well, we actually have a whole team that works with him, from my partner, Chris Cabot, to Julia Barron. We've got an extensive team that works with him, but he is an amazing young man in that you would have no sense if you were around him that he's that big a star. He would ask you how you're doing, how your life is going. He's very concerned with the feelings of others. He's very grounded and makes smart choices and runs his life well. And we've been able to do some fun stuff with him. You saw that he bought into the Kansas City Royals baseball team. He took equity in one of the companies that he endorses. I mean, he's a new wave type of talent. And I think players like that come along once in a generation. I mean, if you think of LeBron James or Tiger Woods or Michael Jordan, he's a generational player, and he works so hard to stay in that position. So with all the hoopla going on around him, he works out every day. He studies really hard. He's sort of preternaturally mature, and he understands that the engine that pulls his train is success on the field. So football comes first. It's about to have a family, but football comes first, and he's still plenty hungry and wants to win multiple Super Bowls. So if you like him on the field, you love him off the field. Big heart, big charitable contributions.
Absolutely. Again, as you mentioned, big, bright future ahead of him. Just got engaged, has a child on the way. So congratulations to him. Yeah, it's definitely a great story for him. And as you mentioned, him being the face of the league, which he is right now at the moment, and he's got cameras on him everywhere. He can't go out without getting cameras on him, and he's handling himself just fine. So, and the fact that you also have other Hall of Fame clients, Kevin Greene, tragic story came out about Kevin. Want to mention that? Want to hear your favorite memories about Kevin?
Oh my God! When Kevin would walk in the room, electricity would be brought in. He had a killer sense of humor. Was a big family person, but he was like a heat-seeking missile on the field. He was really exciting. You think of franchise quarterbacks, but then there are disruptors on the defensive side of the ball. And he'd been in the military. He was very respectful, and to lose someone like that in his 50s was just way too soon. And my heart goes out to his son and wife.
Also, going on to your other Hall of Fame clients, Steve Young, Tony Gonzalez, what's it like seeing those guys still out in the face of the public? You see them on ESPN, Fox. What's it like having those guys still out in the face of the public?
Well, and that's the whole plan that we try to follow, which is when someone retraces their roots to each level, it's how can we enhance second career? So, for example, Deron Cherry, safety in Kansas City, has a Cherry Foundation. He retires from football and he's given the right to buy the Anheuser-Busch distributorship, which is a license to print money. Then we introduce him to Wayne Weaver of the Jacksonville Jaguars, and Deron becomes the very first player in years, retired player, to own part of a team. And that's the model we use with Warrick Dunn in Atlanta. And Ray Childress owned part of the Houston Texans. But then can they go into media? So we have Desmond Howard on Game Day, and Troy Aikman and Steve Young and a number of other people in broadcast. But Steve Young also is chairman of a huge investment firm. And so, or his roommate, Brent Jones, put together a multiple billion-dollar hedge fund. So they aggregate these skills in football, which is mastery of detail, self-discipline, teamwork, high performance in pressure situations, and they're completely applicable to what they do next. So we're already talking when we sign a young player for the draft about what other skills they have and what else they're impassioned about in their life.
I don't think people realize how much work it is. It's not just about contracts and the player's future. It's also a lot more, as you just mentioned, like after football. What's life after football? And that's impressive, the resume you have with these players. Again, these guys are Hall of Famers, and the fact that you didn't just worry about contracts and what they're going to be doing in the future for the NFL. It's their after career. And the fact that you help them out that much, people don't understand that is part of the job, and you guys do very well at that at Steinberg Entertainment. So.
Well, if you take someone like Troy Aikman, he was determined to be a Hall of Fame broadcaster. So it's those athletes who take this seriously, who get involved in business or coaching or media, something in second career that's just exciting, and they have the skill set to do it. And you know what else they have is brand, right? At one point, we had a Troy Aikman auto mall. Because would you rather buy, all things being equal, would you rather toot around town with Troy Aikman on your license plate, or Joe Schmo Ford?
Another question doesn't really pertain to NFL players currently, but guys that are trying to get into the NFL and other sports, what do you look for in a college prospect that makes you go out and say, I would like this guy to be part of our team here? What do you look for in a prospect?
So the talent, of course, needs to be there. But then you look at work ethic. I mean, some of the greatest veterans watch film in their spare time. They're always going over how they can be better. And then you look for the quality that I mentioned, which is courage and performance under pressure. It's easy when everything is rolling your way, but in sports, there always are going to be reverses. And what do you do then? In other words, does this person have the capacity to tune out extraneous matters, adopt a quiet mind, compartmentalize out the distractions, and elevate their level of play when they need to? If you think about it, most games, well, take football, maybe a third of them are blowouts, but 2/3 of them may come down to the last drive. And so the question is, whatever's preceded this moment, what do you do then? So you're looking for that. And of course, we look for people with big hearts who want to be charitably involved and leave a legacy and make an impact.
And that's plenty of what your clients do and former guys do. Another question for me, how is it like dealing with a bunch of different teams? You know, you clearly talk to every single team in the league. Is it very different? Are there teams that you like talking to more? Or are there teams that you don't like talking to less? Because you don't have to mention that. But is every team very similar the way they handle their organizations, or are they all different in their own ways?
They're different. And the key to winning in sports is the quality of ownership, whether you have stable ownership with a long-term plan, and whether they know how to put a front office together that's got a plan for building a team and has mastered drafting and trading and who to cut and the rest of it, and then a coach with a plan. Those organizations, no matter how much they put up in respect of parity and how many devices they have, like reverse order of the draft from, how well you played, salary caps, it really doesn't matter, because a team like the New England Patriots just had a run that really should never have happened. So they're different. And when you take owners like that, they're different too. So Bob Kraft is always reaching out to get advice. He's open. He's interested. Jerry Jones badly wants to win in football. The Steelers have unbelievable stability. And just when people put on that uniform, they play better. And because they feel they have a special heritage. So there are teams that are much more effective in their leadership skills and how they win. So I have relationships with owners at the highest levels. And then we have relationships with general managers. And yes, they have different personalities and are different. And some are much easier to work with than others. So I came to the conclusion years ago that the real battle in sports wasn't labor versus management. It was banding together with owners and franchises to figure out how we could increase the pie. And so we ought not have bad public negotiations for a draft pick, and we ought not have bad collective bargaining public. We're just pushing fans away. So if you look at it that way, we're more partners, not in a financial sense, but we're both heading in the same direction. So it leads you to have honest discussion. And you're in a closed circle. You're going to talk to the same people over and over and over again. So you better be truthful. You better resist the temptation to stick your foot on someone's neck when they're exposed and plan for the long term.
Last question for me. It's not really a question. What's it like having that amazing contract that Mahomes has signed on the resume for you? The biggest in NFL history, something we have not seen. It's something we see in baseball, as you mentioned, with Mahomes taking ownership in the Royals. How impressive is that to have that on your resume? Because it's unheard of.
Well, the last time I did the biggest contract in sports was 1984 with Steve Young and the USFL. And that contract was Now wait for it, Colton. $40 million for 4 years.
Crazy.
I mean, it's like Dr. Evil, right? $40 million. And this one was a few dollars more. Kudos to Chris Cabot for leading those negotiations. And we did really, what that allows you to do is it builds confidence in people that you can somehow deliver a deal at a critical time.
Well, Leigh, I think our time's up here, and I definitely appreciate you coming on.
It's been my pleasure.
You can find Leigh, reach out to him, very, sociable and interactive. Again, appreciate that's how I reached out to you on Twitter. You'll find him at Leigh Steinberg at Twitter. Also, look out for his future events coming up. Agent Academy on February 18th and 19th, and his Super Bowl party, which will be virtual this year, clearly because of COVID-19, on February 6th. So we'll be on the lookout for that. Leigh, again, thank you for your time.
My pleasure. And if you're interested in breaking in the field, go to steinbergsports.com and you'll see we have multiple education platforms. And for the first year, you can come to my big gala Super Bowl party because it's virtual.
Thank you again, Leigh.
My pleasure.